Hey there, Coconuts. It's me again, Princess Cat, and today we're going to do a community request, which is to discuss how to read over your battle reports. And then after that, we're going to progress to the main of our video, which is on Preemptive Strike. Ha! So moving on to this report, this is a recent report I had from our latest invasion. I did some building up in Blood Moon, and I wanted to see how well my theory was when it came to actually being used. So we had I was about 55 billion here, and a 200 plus billion invader came in with some really impressive stats. And we're going to look at this report. So this is a siege defense loss in which I burned. The left-hand side is my side of the report. So this is where we're going to find the defensive stats. Kills is the amount of troops that I killed on or from him. So in this case, he sent a 2.3 million march, and I was able to kill off all of the march. I was very fortunate in that aspect. Defense troops is the amount of troops I had in my empire that were defending. Now, this does not include any troops that are hidden away in other empires, that are out gathering, that are stuck in the warehouse. These are only the amount of troops that are there to defend. Dead is the amount of troops that needed to be revived in the temple. Injured are the amount of troops that are in my hospital. Now, these are all one tier of troops, and we're going to notice that that is higher than my hospital capacity. Your hospital capacity is totaled up. However, it's divided by each tier. So I have about 9.5 million of each tier of troop that can be in my hospital. However, the way that the developers put it is that they don't want troops fighting over beds. So if you have more than that hit within one march, and as long as there's at least one bed available, all those troops are going to go into your hospital. Had he had sent 2 marches at me at the same time, whatever was hit in that second march within that tier would have all gone to the temple. Revive is the amount of troops that the game automatically revives for you, if you had any dead. And survived are the amount of troops that have survived, and that will also include the revive amount, if there's any. On his end, kills is the amount of troops that he's injured or killed. Attack troops is the size of his rally or march. In this case, it's his march. Dead is the amount of troops that have died that he needs to revive with herbs. Now, if he had wings of protection, these would be injured. Traps lost. Revive is the amount of troops that the game automatically revives for you. It's 20% of what dies typically. However, you can get an additional 30% or additional 10% like he has, so a total of 30%. And survived, again, is the amount that were revived as well as any that survived in addition to that. Now, looking below your report, you could take a look at the statistics or stats and generally look and see what it was that they were wearing. Sometimes it's really hard with an account as big as his because you really don't have a grasp of what max research or close to max research can look like. However, if we look on my end, we see that I have a near 6,000 infantry attack, so it's pretty obvious that I was wearing at least, double slaughter. In this case, I was wearing double slaughter plus conquer. And then if we look down at his, we see that his archer attack is on the higher end, so we know that one of his heroes was wearing outcry. We also see that he had a really big debuff, so Majestic was also in there. Now, I feel like I did pretty good, even though there was leverage, because I'm infantry based, and he sent archers. Sometimes, if you look at rallies, that can be really difficult to tell, because standard is 5 of the fillers will give you 10% of their total stats. If you have privilege research, it can be 6. So you can get some pretty crazy stat combinations going on in there. There is something else that you can see on reports called soul extinction, and that's as if Thanos snapped his fingers, and that's the amount of troops that just poof disappeared. They can't be revived, they can't be healed, they're just gone. We saw this in True World, but we also see this with Dark Lord plus 15 or higher sets. And the amount is very small. It's typically, I think it's like 0.01%. Reading through these reports gives you a really good idea on what you're doing right, as well as what you're doing wrong. And you can see, which troops are more vulnerable than other troops, and comparing different reports on what different people send give you an idea of what to switch your guard captain to or deputies to for certain types of attacks. So that is that. Moving on to Preemptive Strike. I want to thank Netmarble and 4plat because they are amazing devs who have been very patient and willing to respond to our multiple inquiries to get further clarification on what this is. Because if you look in the game description, it really doesn't tell you what Preemptive Strike is. It just says, here's research to enhance Preemptive Strike on your T6 plus troops. So I've heard this kind of described before like a zipper. And that's, one side goes, because each march is a little battle in its own. So if you were thinking about it like a zipper, it would be, side 1 goes, then side 2 goes, and side 1 goes, and then side 2 goes. And I've even used it to describe it that way before, and it's simply not the case. Now, in Troop Training 1, you're going to see that you can get 100% attack of Preemptive Strike, and once you research that, you actually have Preemptive Strike now. Troop Training 2 gives you a 25% debuff, as well as a 30% attack. So you can have up to 130% Preemptive Strike. I've also heard it before where people have said, well, if side 1's Preemptive Strike outweighs side 2's Preemptive Strike, then you don't have any. And that's also not the case. Preemptive Strike research and percentage is small, especially when you compare it to troop attack. However, like leverage, it's multiplicative. So instead of it adding into your attack, it multiplies that. So when you're finding out your attack pool, you're going to multiply the amount of troops by your base attack stats. That number then multiplies against your troop attack. That number is then multiplied against your leverage. Your Preemptive Strike. Sorry, I recently did a leverage video as well, which happens to be the same type of multiplicative number. So, kind of the same. Except with Preemptive Strike, instead of needing a specific type of troop in order to enact it, Preemptive Strike applies on all your T6 and plus troops, whether you're attacking or whether you're defending. So we're going to take a look at what a normal attack would look like with no Preemptive Strike. And this is a report that came from when I was first starting in the game. So this is way, way back. So we're going to see here, if you don't have Preemptive Strike, what happens in the attack is that the attacker comes in and hits your lowest tier, and then your lowest tier is left to try and defend, or the lowest tier available is left to try and defend and hit back at their march. So in this case, you see that their T7 didn't get any kills. It started from the bottom up, and then by the time it got to their T7, my troops were gone, and so their T7 had nothing left to hit. In a Preemptive Strike attack, what happens is the attacker hits the lowest tier until their attack pool is spent or they kill off the entire lowest tier. After that, the defender's highest tier responds. So if that's T6, because they don't have T7, then it's T6. If they do have T7, then it's going to be your T7. After that happens, if they don't kill off all of the attacker's march, the attackers continue to hit the next tiers on up until all their attack pool is expended or all the defender's troops are dead. If the defender still has remaining tiers of troops, then their next highest is to say response. So in this case, if they had preemptive strike, and their T7 is what hit the attacker's march. The attacker comes through and hits the rest of the tiers, and his attack pool is expended. The defender still has T6 left. Now his T6 will hit the attacker's march. So I did this funky little drawing to try and illustrate this, and it's what it looks like if an attacker has T7 and he's going to hit a defender with T3, T4, T5, T6, and T7. And what that attack is going to physically look like. Because having an idea of how these attacks work gives you a better idea on why certain defenses work better than others. Thank you for humoring on that, you guys. So again, this is what that's what your attack is going to look like, and that's why your preemptive strike is a super important research, and why you want to make sure that you get as much of that research as possible, because it's going to give you far more benefit than pretty much any other type of research. Now, if there's anything that's left unclear on that, feel free to message me, drop a comment in the comment box. I'll be able to help any way possible. This is why we see, if you look at reports that are one-hit zeros, what you'll typically see is it's their T7 that have the kills and no other troops do. And that's, again, because the attacker came in, hits the lowest tier, and then the defenders come through, kill off whatever march they can, and then the attackers proceed to kill all of the rest of the troops. Now, in some cases, you do see T6s have kills, and that's typically when, the only times I've seen this in reports is when there's a significantly small amount of T7s compared to T6s. Usually it's far under 1 million. So that's about it, guys. If you have any questions, again, just leave me a comment in the comment box below. Please like and subscribe. And as always, you can take a look at our website at www.ironthroneelite.com. Until next time, guys. Alright, guys, so here I've done a nice little handy sketch of basically what we are talking about in this video, which is an attacker having T7 troops attacking a defender with T3 through T7. And so in this first panel is when the attacker hits the defender's lowest tiered meat wall. So he's hitting the defender's T3, and he happens to kill off all of them. So now they're all dead. And at this point, the attack stops, and preemptive strike kicks in. So now the defender's T7 steps up, and he's like, pew, 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 to the attacker. And he tries to kill off as much of the attacker's march as possible. In this scenario, he doesn't kill all of the march. So then what happens is T7 go back to their place, and the attacker continues hitting up the defender's tiers. So now he hits the defender's T4, and he kills them all. And then he goes to the defender's T5, and this is where he expends all his attack pool, killing off the defender's T5. After his attack pool is expended is when the defender's T6 is able to come in and kill the rest of the attacker's march. And we're going to show the attacker dead here with those little crutches. Ah. And the defender's remaining troops are celebrating. So that's a visual representation of it. Thank you for humoring on that, you guys. So again, this is what that's what your attack is going to look like, and that's why your preemptive strike is a super important research, and why you want to make sure that you get as much of that research as possible, because it's going to give you far more benefit than pretty much any other type of research. Now, if there's anything that's left unclear on that, feel free to message me, drop a comment in the comment box. I'll be able to help any way possible. This is why we see, if you look at reports that are one-hit zeros, what you'll typically see is it's their T7 that have the kills and no other troops do. And that's, again, because the attacker came in, hits the lowest tier, and then the defenders come through, kill off whatever march they can, and then the attackers proceed to kill all of the rest of the troops. Now, in some cases, you do see T6s have kills, and that's typically when, the only times I've seen this in reports is when there's a significantly small amount of T7s compared to T6s. Usually it's far under 1 million. So that's about it, guys. If you have any questions, again, just leave me a comment in the comment box below. Please like and subscribe. And as always, you can take a look at our website at www.ironthroneelite.com. Until next time, guys.